Welcome to this video on completing the Utility Viability tool developed by the South Carolina Rural Infrastructure Authority in coordination with numerous partners that support and assist water utilities in this state. First, the basics. This tool is an interactive Excel file where you enter information and answer questions about your utility, which then leads to an overall score. You can download the file from the RIA website. Once you download it, you use it on your own. We will not have access to the data you enter, and neither will anyone else, unless you send it to them. It can be used by any water or sewer utility to assess various aspects of system operations and finances, allowing you to identify potential improvements. Completing this tool may be required as part of a funding application or participation in technical assistance programs. After you download and open the tool, you may see a security warning at the top left of the window due to the macros that the file uses to make it interactive. If you have the option to enable content, click that button and it should fix the problem. If you see a warning like this one with no button, save the file with a new name, close it, and then reopen it. Then you should have the option to enable content. A couple of other tips. Unfortunately, neither Excel Online nor Google Docs will run the macros in the file, so you need to be sure to download it and use it in the Excel app on your computer. And if you find that the pop-up box is cut off at the bottom, which may make it impossible to click the necessary buttons, try decreasing the scale in your display settings. These and other troubleshooting tips are included in a document posted in the same place on the RIA website as the tool itself. Before you start filling in information, you may want to gather some resources or have other staff on hand to assist with some of the sections. The items listed here will be a good start on what you need. Note that if your utility provides both water and sewer services, you should be sure to fill out the information for both of those, even if you are completing this tool for a funding application that only involves one or the other. This provides a more complete assessment. You can also save a partially completed tool and come back to it later with more information, or even share it with someone else to complete. Be sure to click Save Entries and Close Form and save the Excel file before closing it. The first section of the tool requires some technical information. You may have questions about estimating the average age of the infrastructure that's currently in place. We understand that different system components, such as pipes, pumps, and treatment equipment, may have different lifespans, so we have separated them into two questions. While this still might be a very rough estimate, the idea is that the age of the system may signal a need for replacement and capital investment. For example, if most of the water pipes are over 50 years old, we know that significant capital improvements will be needed soon. For smaller systems, this could be estimated by considering when the system was first built and how much of it has been replaced or upgraded since then. Larger or more complex systems might use calculated depreciation or information from their asset management program. You will also need to enter the monthly bill for a residential customer that uses 5,000 gallons of water. If your utility has different rates for different groups of residential customers, you should generally use the rates that are charged to the largest or core group of your customers. For a municipal system, those would be the customers that live inside the city or town limits. In the last portion of this section, you will need your DES inspections and any notices of violation or consent or administrative orders you have received in the last 5 years. You will also need to know whether any consent orders remain active. The next section gets into general management and governance aspects of operations. Most of these are pretty straightforward, but there are some nuances to the first 4 questions. You should answer yes to the capital improvement plan question if you have a written plan for capital purchases for at least the next 3 years. It should have been developed by either your internal operating staff, consulting engineer, or financial advisor based on your actual infrastructure needs. For the asset management program, answer yes if you have developed an inventory of your existing assets and condition and have written policies for managing the system assets to deliver an appropriate standard level of service. It includes an annual evaluation of the maintenance, repair, and replacement needs of your existing equipment and infrastructure. Answer yes to the GIS question if you have the GPS location of key elements of your system, like meters, manholes, valves, pump stations, etc., in a digital map such as Esri. Finally, the emergency preparedness plan should be an updated written plan that outlines steps required to respond to or mitigate the effects of various types of disasters. The third step provides information regarding socioeconomic characteristics of your service area. The only thing you must provide on this page is the town or county that best aligns with the utility's service area, and then the data will auto-populate. Based on census data, it will be a rough approximation for SPDs and other utilities that serve more than one jurisdiction. And finally, we have the financial section. This is an important component of the tool as a factor in determining long-term viability. Most of the numbers entered here are based on standard measures of good business practices for operations and maintenance of a utility system. They're similar to things a bank or our SRF program would look at when considering a utility for a loan. The information is best completed by a utility's accounting or finance staff. However, we have provided detailed instructions on what you need and where to find it. So even if you don't have accounting staff available, you can follow the instructions to fill it out, and also know that RIA staff are happy to assist with any questions. First, you need your organization's most recent annual audit. Having annual financial statements is a standard business practice, and most utilities are required by state law to have those statements reviewed by an independent auditor. This should be completed after every fiscal year, but sometimes it gets delayed. If you don't have an audit that is less than 2 years old, you should gather any unaudited financial statements or summaries that were prepared for the most recent fiscal year. Municipal and county utilities should be sure to use the financial statements that are specifically for the enterprise or utility fund, not the statements reflecting the city or town's general fund. In this example, there are separate water and wastewater funds, but often they're combined. If the city has other enterprise funds, such as one for an electric utility, make sure you're only looking at the water and wastewater funds. Most special purpose districts and nonprofit utilities don't have separate funds like this. If you have an audit, you should be able to pull all the numbers you need from the 3 statements listed in the instructions, and I will show some examples of where to find each one. If you don't have an audit, this section will be more difficult. You may not be able to identify all of the information requested, and that will affect the final score. However, you can still provide the information you do have and complete the tool. I will show each question in this section and where to find it on sample financial statements. Although your statements may not look exactly the same as these, this should give you a good idea of where to start. Step 4A asks for 3 items that come from the statement of net position, also called the balance sheet. Unrestricted cash includes cash and cash equivalents the utility has on hand that have not been restricted by contract or by the governing body. If investments are not restricted, they should also be included. Outstanding long-term debt includes current and non-current portions of all bonds payable and other long-term notes payable. There may be multiple types of debt that need to be combined. If your utility doesn't have any long-term debt, meaning you pay as you go for capital projects, it won't be listed on the statement, and you should enter 0 as the answer. The third metric includes all capital assets, such as property, plant, and equipment, minus the amount of total depreciation taken, including prior years. If you don't have a current audit, you may not have an up-to-date calculation of depreciation. If this is the case, be sure to mark unable to determine for this question. You'll notice that you can't proceed to the next part of this section until you answer each question. Remember that you can always mark unable to determine if you aren't sure. If you find the answer later, you can come back to the tool and change it. Step 4B asks for 5 items from the income statement, which is often titled the Statement of Revenues, Expenses, and Changes in Net Position. Operating revenues will be clearly listed on the financial statement. They include total funds received from the utility's operations, such as rates, service fees, connection fees, etc. Do not include grants or loans, which would be listed separately on the statement, as shown in these two examples. Operating expenses include total amounts paid for salaries, equipment, administration, and plant operation and maintenance. Do not include interest or principal on debt, large equipment purchases, or capital improvement expenditures. Note that operating expenses include depreciation. If your statements single out depreciation like this, be sure you are using the total operating expenses. Annual depreciation expense is the amount charged for depreciation in the fiscal year of the statements used for this tool. As noted earlier, you may not be able to calculate this if you don't have access to current audited financial statements. If that's the case, mark Unable to determine. Change in net assets is sometimes called net income or change in net position. It is your operating revenue minus operating expenses, depreciation, and interest expense. You need to have an accurate number for depreciation to calculate the change in net assets. So if you don't have audited financials, you may need to mark Unable to determine. This is the only number in the financial section that may be either positive or negative. If it's shown in parentheses on the statement, enter it with a minus sign in the tool. The final number you need from this statement is the annual interest expense, which is the amount of interest paid or accrued on the total outstanding debt for the year. Because it is an expense, the statement will usually show it as a negative number. However, the formulas in the tool already consider this as an expense, so please enter it as a positive number. Note that you may also have interest revenue from investments, but you should only use the expense. If your utility doesn't have any long-term debt, you likely won't find interest expense on the statement and should enter 0 as the answer. For step 4C, you need the statement of cash flows. Here, you will find the annual debt principal payments, which is the amount paid on the total outstanding debt that reduced the amount owed. This number is often found in the cash flows from capital and related financial activities, or in a table in the audit report notes. If there are no audited statements, you can use the amortization tables provided by the lender for the year you're reporting on. Similar to interest expense, this number will be negative on the statement because it's a cash outflow, but it should be entered as a positive number in the tool. Also, like with other debt-related metrics, utilities with no long-term debt should enter 0. The final page of the financial section applies only to municipal or county utilities. If you answer no to the first question, the rest will fill in as not applicable and you can proceed to the next page. However, municipal or county utilities will need to look into any annual transfers they make to their organization's general fund in order to answer these questions. Transfers should be noted on the statement of cash flows, but you may need to consult the financial statement notes or other records to get more details. These questions are important because substantial transfers can indicate possible financial problems, since utilities should be able to be self-funded by customer fees. Once you complete the financial section, the tool will calculate your score. When you click Finish, you will be taken to the score summary sheet. Here you will see the overall score at the top, which is color-coded red, yellow, or green as an overall indicator of viability. You can also see the response given for each question, as well as the number of points earned and possible. In this column, you can see the scoring methodology for each question. There's also a percentage score for each section, and the section headers are color-coded to quickly show which areas a utility may be struggling with. Questions where any points were lost are in red text. If you scroll down to the financial section, you will first see the values you entered, many of which are not scored directly because they are part of a calculated financial indicator. Scrolling down further, you will see the calculated metrics. The formulas for each metric are included in the first column. To print the score summary or save it as a PDF, you can click on the Print Form button or use Excel's normal print and save features. You will need to do this if you are completing the tool to submit with a funding application. If you need to change any of your answers, be sure to click Return to Assessment. This will bring you back to the first interactive step, but all your answers will be there and you can click through to the section you need to edit. After you click Save Entries and Close Form, you should see your change reflected on the score summary. Depending on your answers to the questions, you may notice that you have less than 100 possible points. This happens when specific questions are not applicable to a particular utility. For example, utilities with no long-term debt will not be scored on the debt to net fixed assets metric. This is why the overall score is shown as points as well as a percentage. After you complete the tool, we would encourage you to share the results with your board or council and use the information as an indicator of areas where you may be able to strengthen your utility's health in the long term. We have a number of resources available on the RIA Utility Viability webpage. In the Viability Toolkit, we have links to a curated list of online resources organized by topic. Many of these provide in-depth information on steps you might take to address different issues. Thank you for your interest in the Utility Viability Tool. If you need any assistance using it, RIA staff are happy to help. Please don't hesitate to contact our office via phone or email.